Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Christensen with One Sage's View Astrology, and we are continuing on from the video. This is a part 2 of the Synastry. So we're going to be continuing on the detail analysis of the charts for Nicola Coughlan and Luke Newton as it pertains to their Synastry. And I am hoping you're enjoying this so far. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. If you have any questions, like maybe in comparison to another astrology video that you've seen and kind of wonder about something that you've heard or whatnot, put that in the comments. Let's take a look at it. I am happy to maybe do a follow-up to the Synastry because Synastry is such a rich subject because there's so much information. What I think about that's very interesting about Nicola Coughlan and Luke Newton's Synastry is not just the Venus and the Mars, but it's also her sun in Capricorn and his combination of Uranus and Neptune in Capricorn. That's such a strong combination that they have there as well. And the divine timing of when the progressed sun moved in both of their charts and what that did for them and how that emphasized. So I even went back to 2019 and looked at the very first month I think they met was July, even though I think Nicola knew that she got the part, I think in April, but it wasn't announced maybe until July that all the cast. But what I can tell, I think I'm not sure if their very first selfie was their very first meeting, but it's possible that she would have done that by taking a selfie to kind of mark the moment, but not sure. We can explore that. But I thought it was interesting in that review of that chart for that year, kind of what their progressed suns were doing in both their charts. Anyway, let's get into it. It's fun. I hope you're enjoying this. It's entertainment, but it's also fun. It's a way to spend the summer. And even though I bet you this probably goes into the fall, how much material we have. I have more information now from other dates that I didn't have because I was on another super fan, and her live went like 4 hours. Thank you, Tiff. So anyway, if you can support her, I would highly recommend following her. And yeah, it's fun. We're having fun. So let's get started. All right. Okay, so we also see just the themes of the show, the Eros on her Sagittarius, Uranus planet. That's like the explosiveness of the desire nature of Luke Newton. Now he plays it out as Colin, but this is Luke Newton, desire, tapping into her Uranus, which is not a personal planet. This is transpersonal, but it's connected to her. And evolutionary astrology there is a connection. It's close to, so it's a co-ruler of her ascendant, so what she will project, right? So these kinds of things. And also, but how explosive and how it's going to it will break paradigms that I can't even fully communicate yet, because it's like their relationship has the potential to show something completely different than we even have in all the lineup, all the different kinds of relationships people have. This is potentially new that we've seen. And I don't even know how to articulate that, because we talk about best friends, we talk about close friends, and we have lovers, and then we have spouses, and we have boyfriends, girlfriends and girlfriends, and boyfriends and these kinds of things. But there's something very different to the relationship, I think, that's still emerging. And it's hard because some people compare it to Kate and Leo. Yeah, Leo DiCaprio. And that relationship, because they're a very long-term relationship. There's something different here. And I'd have to explore their charts. Maybe we have their ascendants, and I could explore kind of what that might look like, because they have a very long-lasting friendship, which is really beautiful, and probably something that is really an evolutionary turn for Leo and Kate. Both of them have something that they've learned about relationship from that relationship being what it is and how it's structured, right? Like what they've learned from that as souls and how much they cherish that. Now, and there's also been a comparison, I think, to Luke and Nicola related to Tom and Zendaya. I know that there is we do have a chart for Zendaya and a time. So that one could be easily explored, because we actually have a time of birth for Zendaya. So I think that might be a worthy exploration to kind of make some comparisons, because they had like friendship that then then because they were co-stars and together in Spider-Man, that turned into a longer and a close, significant romantic partner relationship, right? So there's something to explore there, and that would be kind of an exciting one to look at, because we can maybe compare that and see what common things are, what things are different. But I think the most significant things are what we've discussed in their individual charts, is the instinctual nature and all the fire energy that sits in Nicola's chart, how Luke's Venus taps into her Mars, her willpower, her passion, her directness. She's very direct. Sometimes, I mean, he loves and she makes him laugh, so that's part of that communication and perception. And also, somewhere his midheaven, I'm not exactly sure where his midheaven is, but it is still landing in her third house of communication. So there's something about learning about communication between these two. And also purpose. What's purpose? What's how the creative and the purpose, the vision, the philosophy of something. That's Luke's learning that. Okay. And then also the mirroring is a massive lesson in how individuals connect. And some people would be like, I would not in another time and place maybe put those two together, but when you see how they played off each other and their relationship matured over 3, 4, 5, I think that's now 5 years, up through their season 3 work that they've done. But seeing them as individuals, as Nicola, and they're still at work, right? They're still doing their jobs. It's very the Saturn part of their charts, but it's also, celebrating their creativity and them receiving accolades for that. That's Leo, the ascendant Leo but Luke is like got the loop with her on that mirroring and what we see, because she was very much the more vocal one in the interviews, but how they played off of each other was important, and the mirroring effect that we saw so many mirrors on that tour. So those are some big ones. What else points out? Oh, yeah. We also see her moon, because her moon is very important as it pertains to the feelings, her feelings, and how she feels grounded, or where she feels at home and where she feels cozy and all those kinds of things. But our feeling selves is where it stabilizes us, but what interrupts our stability is volatility and those kinds of things. She has a lot of stability there. And she also has that sun. Her sun and moon in the same element of earth actually gives her a lot of groundedness. And that's why Luke feels such comfort, I think, in her presence, because of how that connects him, right? So that's super valuable and insightful in that. But the moon for her also is interestingly opposite her own Pallas Athena, and that then connects up pretty close to being opposite his own Psyche. So since this has been a lot of Eros and Psyche exploration, I like to kind of how are those kind of showing up in the Synastry chart? And so this is an opposition. So this to me is, getting into her beautiful body and how it's perceived by people, by him, and the passion that's coming up from the Psyche being opposite of that deeper instinctual passion, obsessive passion potential, right? That's a Scorpio Psyche that has an obsessive quality to it. We see it in the show, but how does that translate over? Does that translate to Luke has to take into consideration his own obsessive, impulsive, and desire nature? Could be, right? But when it comes to her own body and the parts that are quite visible, but it's kind of like that. This is a very highly sensual moon, a moon in Taurus, the 5 senses, and language of love has a lot to do with the body and the sensuality of the body. So there's something to that. But his Psyche is definitely looking at it like from the Scorpio increased desire nature of obsession that's cued in there. And then when we have that crossing in his chart through that T-score from all his Aquarius fixed energy in her first house, it's got that fixed stare and so the ability to actually stare into each other's eyes. It took them time to get that down, but they did, and now they have it, right? So they said they were giggling like kids about trying to do that look into their eyes scene. But now I think you see him in the dance, that one wedding dance at the wedding banquet, breakfast or whatever it was, where they're dancing post-wedding. They stare the whole time into each other's eyes. That's pretty significant for the soul to look, I like that, even if you're, in a choreographed dance. That's another thing about being a partner, is how you hold your heart and hold your frame to be a good partner. And of course, there is a lead in the partner of the dancing. And that is something that they love to do together, and that they shared that outside their characters, like absolutely love dancing with each other. And there's something I think that they're learning about that movement with each other and then what that means. And that also ties into Luke's Venus in Aries. I always think of a Venus in Aries as the movement, the instinctual movement. And when it's in dance is another way I like to look at it, because I think a lot of athletes that are ballerinas can have like that Venus in Aries because of the athletic ability of it. But it's also the instinctual knowing how to maneuver in relationship to that connection. So when they're dancing, they have a certain movement, but they have other things that they had to choreograph somewhat loosely, or maybe I'm pretty sure they probably discussed it at length to how they were going to do certain scenes, like the carriage scene, and how they wanted to move or hit certain things in those particular scenes. But I believe there was a video that was done analyzing that frame by frame by someone. I think her name is Sammy, but I can't remember. Analyzing that frame by frame about each emotion that we see on Luke's face as on Colin's face, but Luke is portraying that, and then Nicola in her response to that. And so there's the dynamic of that dance of body response, or they communicate verbally, but then there's other cues on the face, cues in their body movements, and then how they are when they are together. So there's different things that I think that they are picking up on were picking up on when they were in those moments and filming those in 22 and 23. But I think when they watch them back, there's another reflection point of kind of cluing in on the power of those subtle connections and the instinctual natures. So there's something to that. Yeah. So I think that the instinctual part of dance and movement, I think, is really interesting about his Venus connected to her Mars. And then also his Venus in a trine with her own Venus. His Venus, they're both like in fire, how they move. So, because Venus is how we connect and build rapport with others, and then how that then can translate in who we desire, how we choose who we desire, those kinds of things. So if Luke Newton is truly the slow to think about something, that he has said he doesn't believe in love at first sight or something like that, or the friends to lovers, and more is I know what I want when I see it. That would be like a Venus in Aries. However, his Venus went through the total disconnecty thing with the total solar eclipse. So I think he is having an inner self-awareness of like, wait a minute, maybe I think differently about this now. There is a potential, massive potential, for him to completely backtrack what he's said about that, about how what he's attracted to, why he's attracted to it, because I don't think he's aware of how much, when you have this connection with people for the time that you're with them and have multiple things that you're attracted to, and then how that would spill over into wanting more, there could be the slow burn to it, really slow burn. It could be just like there's an ember there and it's been there, keeps going, and then when they reconnect, there's other potentials for reconnection, and how that can turn things on or out. It depends on a lot of other things. So like, are they in other relationships that are committed to other people? Is that true at those future points of reconnection? That's what I'm talking about here, because I go from the direction of, I give people the benefit of the doubt. They're going to walk in their highest choices for themselves and stay committed, or decide that well, this isn't working for me, so I have to go this way, or somebody makes that decision for them. So there's these kinds of potentials for reconnection. So I really think there is that inner exploration going on for Luke Newton because of the total solar eclipse on his progressed Venus, as it pertains to, I might think about what it means about the instinctual nature I have with the idea about friends to lovers versus love at first sight, and what I thought before. So there's something of in that mix for sure going on for Luke Newton because of that. But for her, because that's her arcing of her life, there are things that can transpire by choices that get made that also they've already had a kind of a disruption to sort maybe of an instinctual is going in this direction, but to me, her north node in third house of communication and perception is you're not necessarily seeing everything yet. You have, a tighter connection to your own instincts, but you're very familiar with this other person, but they're figuring things out. Doesn't mean it all comes together. There's a potential that, the paths could just not cross in the way that people would hope. But there is the potential that there could be the slow burn on one person and the other one. It's just the timing. The instincts is there. There's other things that are still there. High regard, and how their other planetary combinations come together. The more time they do spend together, the more likely it will. But there's something in the power of actually having a separation for a moment to reflect as well. So, and there's a lesson being learned around relationships for her. So whatever path it takes, there's something that's being learned extensively in this particular relationship. Another thing that was timing wise that I think was really important that his progressed sun was down on her Jupiter, which is important because that accentuates this connection about purpose, vision, higher learning. The fact that they connected and talked about astrology just makes me giggle when they were in Australia, and then again in the interviews on the promo tour and other places. But it's kind of like that to me is like a divine timing of opening up to astrology. Even that the season 3 series for Bridgerton had them on promo tour doing something for Colin and Penelope and the Colin and Penelope astrology. I mean, come on, it's almost like we're gonna pull out the astrology. I'm surprised we didn't get their astrology charts exact, but maybe there was a respect given for that to kind of have that private, because they have elements in their charts that make them private. So there's something to that. If they want to share that, that's at their own decision to do so. We have rising signs, but I don't think they understand the importance of having the exact that is shared. Like, yeah, my rising sign is this degree and this minute, because I was born at this time on this place on the earth, because that does give us sharp angles, and there's very important things that happen on the angles. I think I've covered many parts that I want to cover on the Synastry. It's so important about each piece and how it gets picked up, but there's divine timing, and divine timing comes in when I'm looking at the transits being the transits activate the progress chart. There's also, we look at solar arc. If I had the exact birth times, I'd feel more comfortable with the solar arc because I don't have the ascendant exactly. So the angles would be off for a solar arc chart. They're still off a bit for a progress, but the progressed, I'm really looking at the progressed moon. And the other planets like Venus, the progress chart is pretty tight because of how fast planets move. So to have Luke's at 19 degrees is still 19 degrees for the Venus in its progress chart. So now I can spend more time looking. It takes time to nail down through, but I don't have a lot of precise dates, exact dates. Like I don't have the exact date that Nicola's father passed away. That's an exact date. I have Luke Newton's exact date. His grandpa passed away. So I need an actual list of exact dates to actually rectify a chart until you have like about, I don't know, I like to have about 10 items of exact date things that help us rectify a chart to get closer to the actual rising sign time. I might be able to do it with just a few, so I'll try, but it takes a lot of time to do it. I think I've covered a lot of the detail. The other one I wanted to point out is that progressed sun for Luke Newton when it's sitting at the by progression now at 18 of Pisces is actually activating that whole Eros and Psyche opposition and her Jupiter in her chart. So that kind of is interesting that his progressed sun activates that part in her own natal chart just by the timing of that connection and where how things are all kind of blowing up for them creatively as artists, and that expansive giving her so much opportunity for her life, her career, him as well. But that when his sun accentuates, it's almost like the partner in dance who would put the spotlight on her. So it's like he's bringing that sun, the timing of everything is bringing his sun to her Jupiter and expanding that in our awareness. So I think that's really, really significant because it expands, it's kind of bringing such heightened illumination to her career house because Jupiter is the ruler of the Sagittarius. So that's really interesting. I think I've covered most of the things I want to cover. Now, I really haven't talked about his Mars very much because his Mars and his Venus are square widely, but he'll have Juno, right? That is a true square. So this is interesting that he has this Mars by birth was retrograde. That's another thing that I also wanted to point out. I'll go back to it though, is when he was 10 years old, that Mars in the progress chart would have stationed to go direct. So there was like something very key for him. And I think I mentioned this in another video about something transpiring in his life for things around instincts, maybe how he might have even, cued in something with his mother because of the cancer, or family being nurtured, whatnot. But it's Mars. It's kind of like the protective mechanism comes out. So, and it could have had some kind of connection with a female at age 10. Not sure of his storyline when he was age 10, but could have been something that was significant and he would remember it. In the progressions, his Venus has progressed to 19, puts it there. But as time goes on, that Venus will stop its progression forward in Aries, and actually it will station. And I looked that up because in March of 1993, if you go to an ephemeris and look at the Venus, you can see that it's, March 1st, it's at 17, 18, 19. So you get down to March 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. Then right there at 20 degrees, it's ready to station retrograde. So not only do we have the total solar eclipse at 19, he's going to have a Venus that by progression is starting to slow down and get heightened. When a planet by transit is in stationing to go retrograde, it starts from our point of view on Earth, it starts standing still on this particular point. And so that point in the chart gets kind of what I call hot. And it is very, very active point. So for that 19 degree, 20 degrees of Aries for Luke Newton, especially 19, because he's already had the total solar eclipse, but we have Venus by progression moving to come to a peak at 20 and then go back by progression. Now that takes years, okay? He is 31 right now, and I believe if you take, he was born on February 5th, and you minus till we get to his age. I have to do this with my pen. He's basically born in 1993. He's 31 this year, so that puts it in 2024, right? So we have 28 days in February minus he was born on the 5th, so that's 23. So 23 he gets by progression all the way through February, and then March, you have so many days in March when it gets to that point. So he is 31 now minus the 23, so we're sitting at like March 8th. So if we're counting forward, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right there. So kind of sitting at like March 7th from his progressions. And then you just kind of look forward. And then you go 1, 2, 3, 4 more years. So within the next 4 years, he will have this major kind of thing transpiring in anything Venus related in his chart, because by progression, it's stationing in Aries on a very sensitive point, but then going to retrace that. So there's a potential for him to retrace things he adores and career themes that he's had during that time. I hope that makes sense. So I think, we just kind of add that up. So 31 plus 4 more years. So when he's 35, 36, I think it's like 30. 35 might be like his connecting it behind the scenes, and we might not be visible to, but I think when he's 36, we'll probably see it. So I think there's still these kind of connecting points that he's living through and navigating. And it's really important to kind of pay attention to planetary movement and timing, because that progressed Venus says so much about what he is going to live. And we kind of have to look at it as, how does a man experience his Venus when he's a heterosexual? Or even if he wasn't a heterosexual, if he was any of the rainbow, but not that Luke Newton is. I'm just saying we have to kind of keep open mind about how people work with their Venus. The Venus is about how it's our yin, but if you have a yin in a yang sign, how it will navigate it, right? It will operate on the instincts, moving towards something. But when it's getting a disconnect and then reconnect, and it's progressing, it's kind of like, does that work for me? Is that working for me? How might I look at things in a different way? How time has passed and things, what has he been learning about himself and his own nature? And then when it goes retrograde, it's going to have another pull that he kind of pulls inward towards, himself more. But you just have a moment that you have a redefinition of yourself around those things. Okay. So that's kind of interesting, right? Because that's not too far off in the future. I think there's definitely some things that happen over the next couple of years that he's going to be navigating and figuring out about that part of his life. And, I don't think that their friendship's going anywhere fast in terms of going away, or at least from what we can see. We can only go by what they've shared with us, right? There could be something else behind the scenes, but there still seems to be a solid friendship going on there. But what happens, what transpires over time, navigating certain things in life. So I think this is interesting. I think there's a lot to be said for how they connect, what's going on, both of what we are visible to, but also what's kind of probably behind the scenes that not communicated, but can be seen with the astrology, because we can see it and we can observe, yes, he is having kind of this interesting thing happen in his career, but he's having a different kind of experience than what Nicola is, because if he's Leo rising, that Venus is responsible his 10th house of career. But we won't see all of the way that plays out until we get to his 10th house annual perfection, which is in a couple years, when I believe season 4 comes out. I think other projects that may land in the next 2 years will tell us a lot about what's going on there, but also other things that they might do as friends. And we see that might give us some visibility, but maybe because it does have like an impact on the top of his chart, because his Venus is on the top of his chart, more visible. Let's see. And her Venus is also at the top of her chart, but hers will show up more in friends, in the frame and context of friends. As when it goes beyond friends, it will get pulled more privately, because her 7th house is Leo. Nicola's 7th house is Leo, and that shows her sun in the 12th house. So she will pull it behind the scenes. I hope that makes sense. So as soon as there's a recognition of something that's more intimate, more personal, more romantic in that way, yeah, there might be some visibility to it, but there will be a strong pull from her to pull it private behind the scenes. So, and here's another thing that's so funny. It just kind of keeps coming when I work with it, because his sun by progression has moved into Pisces. He is more likely to have less boundary. Pisces have an amount of feeling that is activating the other parts of his chart that are water, okay? But like his Mars, which is kind of the attraction part that acts on it, and then unsure of itself. That would be a Mars in Cancer, unsure of itself, trying to act the thing, even in real life a little bit. But so there's that contradiction between having the Venus in Aries who wants to go get what it wants, but then it has, I'm not sure I'm going to get it, right? And then, but the progressed sun sitting on her Jupiter, but it's more the progressed sun for him in Pisces versus her progressed sun in Aquarius. I guess both of them have susceptible points of where leaks could happen. Like, oh, that one got through, or that thing that you were trying to hide had a peek through, right? So for her, it would be, I said something like that would be like, oops, or a look, where his feelings will be visible on the face, because his sun will have progressed into so much Pisces, and how visible that would be, especially with Saturn in Pisces and Neptune in Pisces. It's just amplifying that for him. So the feeling parts is just lots of feeling. So I find this fascinating. It's fun to explore these themes and what gets pulled out in the little threads. Is it definitive? We already have them in a very close, really caring, deeply caring friendship. I'm sure that friendship has been shifted slightly, because it would be just like you if you had a heterosexual friend who is in other sex, like you have a male friend and you're female, you have a male friend, he's in another relationship, how close you then are when he's in a relationship with someone else. You kind of change your dynamic slightly. You pull back. That's normal. That's healthy. Yeah, that would just happen. However, they're not on set together right now. That could change when their dynamic is when they're back on set and preparing for season 4. But there still could be how that reconnects up, how easy it is to get back connecting, having to learn new dances and themes that they might be playing out in season 4. I mean, it's going to be interesting, because isn't it in season 4 that we know that there's a masquerade ball? So there's this whole thing of having the masks. Okay, so that's kind of fun, right? Like, oh, we're going to have this huge scene. Now it's going to be different lead, but isn't it interesting to have like, okay, the masks go back on, to have a masquerade to be somebody that you're not, or you can't be, maybe you're not known for who you are. There's a mask being put on the face. And I wonder if that's right immediately in that first episode that comes out 2 years from now, right? Because there could be a reconnect, but then there's a mask that gets put on symbolically to, we're still just great friends, but then there may be something else. They might protect that part of their lives. That could happen. So anyway, just having fun. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. If you're interested in your own astrology and exploring Eros and Psyche, or the transits of the moment, or maybe even diving into understanding, what does a progressed moon mean? We can get into that and what that means for you as an individual. I'm looking at maybe doing classes, that pertain to some of this stuff in the future, but right now I'm still playing with it. And I want to do a little bit more on Eros and Psyche on my own for exploring through each of the signs. And I think that will be adding to my own knowledge around that to take it a little bit further than I've, dipped my toe in so far. So I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.